Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this week's session. The topic for this week will be an operations update from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. My name is Charles Rodriguez with the U.S. EPA Region 5. With me is Tricia Edwards, On-Scene Coordinator with Region 5, and Mark Durno, former On-Scene Coordinator with Region 5. We will have a presentation from Tricia and Mark. And after that, we'll follow with a Q&A session. So we please ask you to hold any questions until after the presentation. We are having the meeting recorded with the camera back there. So during the Q&A session, please wait until you have the microphone in hand so we can have your voice captured in the video. The video is recorded and then we upload it in our EPA response website. If you don't know where that is, you can grab one of the newsletters we have here in the front. We have the web address there and a QR code where you can look at it on your phone. So I will turn it over to Mark, who will kick it off.
You're fine. You can come sit wherever. We'll move chairs for you guys. That's okay.
Yeah, feel free to move chairs around, Robin.
Yeah.
Don't be shy. Okay, just a couple quick notes before I turn this over to Tricia. If you remember a while back, Tricia gave you a good operations update about a month and a half ago, maybe, or so. A lot's changed since then. Last time, it was right after the infamous burn pits were dug out, and we gave you the drone overview flight show of the derailment area. So we don't have an overview flight like that. So the next time we do this, we'll try and make that happen.
Yeah, it's already lined up.
Awesome. Because it really does give you a much better perspective of the site when you see it, live from the air the week that's happening. Just a couple other quick notes. First of all, our Welcome Center hours have changed. If you didn't notice that in our newsletter, instead of being 8 to 8 during the week, it's now 9 to 6, mainly because the majority of the folks that have come to see us usually come in right after work, and so from 6 o'clock on, we just didn't get any visitors. So give our staff who've been working 12-hour days a little bit of a break. And on the weekends, we are open from 10 to 4. Is it, Charles? 10 to 4 on Saturday. Saturday and Sunday, again, same thing. Nobody was coming in on Sundays, which is good. We all need a day off, so that's that. Secondly, after we're done with the operations update, I imagine a lot of you might have some questions about the news that came out yesterday about dioxin sampling that was done along Taggart Street. I'll give you a quick update on that. I talked to Mr. Smith today and understood better what their sampling program was, so we can talk a little bit about that after Tricia's done. And also, as we roll through this, what we're leading to is to tell you about, and really the key message today is that we're getting ready to start, finally, after all this time, start the assessment work, the full assessment work on Sulphur Run. We've been wanting to do that for over a month now, but again, we just couldn't get our plan finalized. Well, now it's finalized. So we'll get Sulphur Run characterized and figure out what the cleanup options should be there based on that assessment. And then hopefully we'll have the Leslie Run plan done down the road. So we'll talk more about that as Tricia gives her update. So with that, Tricia.
Thanks, Mark. So as Mark said, my name's Tricia Edwards. I'm an on-scene coordinator based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Thanks. So I actually was on phone duty the night this came in. So I've been working this since day one. So we had some rotations. There's 2 other operations section chiefs with me on rotation. So you'd see myself, Andy or Brian in future. So yeah, I tried to get one of those videos today, but I went home for a week to see my dad's in cancer treatment. So I went home to see him and came back and requested that video, but they didn't have it ready for us to be able to display, I guess. So it was a late afternoon request. So my apologies, but I'll make sure that we have it for the next one. So for those of you that were here last time, Charles and his crew helped me get some photos together since, like I said, I was off site for a bit. But I like to do the presentations predominantly by photos and not a lot of text. So I'd rather be able to paint a picture for you and really show you what's going on as we go through the operations. So just on the cover slide that we've got here, just kind of a broad part that doesn't fit into the actual agenda, but you may have seen, right? So dust has been an issue. You know, a lot of gravel was brought in for our laydown areas for our equipment, and inherently, when you drive over gravel, there's a lot of dust formed, right? So there's a lot of fines come out of that. So inherently, we were constantly battling, you know, the amount of water that we were putting on the roads and vacuuming that water and then really just smearing around a whole bunch of mud. And so it was an inherent problem throughout the site. So as you can see in this top photo, we were doing a lot of, there's been a lot of paving done throughout the area. And that's in a very concerted effort to help us to maintain that dust. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but just putting water on the roads when we have like, you know, dusty conditions, you know, from those gravel lots and things like that, just putting water on the roads is not a problem, because actually it causes another problem, because all of that water and that dust that was on the road inevitably goes down the drains, and then we're impacting Sulphur Run in another way. So we're trying to be as cognizant of the issue as possible. So that's why you see a lot of paving that's been going on over the past couple months. This lower picture is just an example of them driving sheet piling. Just to give you an idea, this will be over by the north side, and where these are going to be the effluent tanks. But I will go into that a little bit easier. Hard to explain from that photo. So the intent for my presentation this evening will to just touch on our air operations, our soil operations, and then, as Mark alluded to talk a bit more about the Sulphur Run and Leslie Run, so our water operations as a whole. So just to give you just some photos from some different, this lower photo, actually that is our regional administrator, Deborah Shore, and she was getting a tour. But this photo, for those, oops, wrong one. Sorry. This is a tent that we have set over at our forward operating base. We try to take photos every week or so because we rotate so many people in and out. So this is just to kind of show you a group of the little army that I have that are helping to do our air monitoring and to do all of the sampling here on site. We have a remarkable group of people. We've had people that have been here since February that have not gone home. They've had days off, but they've not gone home. Some of them live in California. They work wildfires, and they've been here, and they've been dedicated, and they've been amazing, and I'm proud to work beside them. So, given a newer, a little bit more updated image, and I showed last time that I was here as well, and I'm sure you've seen different versions of this as each time goes through. But here is, essentially the point in which the derailment occurred. And the last time I was here, we went over the excavation of the track. So this main area, so basically this is Pleasant Drive, right? Just so Taggart, and then Martin back here. So, and I guess you all know that area better than I do. I've just learned it really well. So, so anyway, in this area, this excavation has all been completed along the track. Over 1,900 feet of the track, the ballast, and then the soil beneath that was impacted has been excavated and removed from the site. The next area that we focused on during that excavation was North Ditch. And North Ditch is a tributary to Sulphur Run, so that has been excavated, and then there's a crossover down here. So that area has been excavated, but water still doesn't flow through there quite yet. It's still being bypassed through that there's three 24-inch HDPE pipes that run up and around the site, basically this purple line that kind of goes up and around and then back into Sulphur. So water still isn't flowing down North Ditch, but it will be at some point in the future. The next area we have is car scrapping area 3, and then we have car scrapping area 4. So I'm going to walk through our presentation and talk about each one of these areas in a little bit more detail. So to start, air operations, right? So one of our greatest concerns on this site, and the night that we got this call, one of the things that I immediately requested upon deploying people to get here was I was requesting plume modeling be done, so that we knew what type of potential plume that we had and where our greatest threats were. And then so based on the activities that have gone on site, we have strategically placed different air monitoring equipment throughout the site. So this one is a combination of the EPA's air monitoring equipment that is located on site. And so they're divided up. These pink dots that you see kind of scattered all about, there are 22 of those locations, and those are our roving air monitoring locations. So we have a team of people that go out to those locations and just hit those locations all day, each day. And they usually hit those points usually 2 to 4 times a day. So they maybe, so those continue to be done. CTH actually has teams that complement that as well. So hundreds of points get monitored throughout the day, each day. The next things that I'd like to show are these yellow diamonds that are here. Those are our air sampling locations. So we're still conducting 24-hour air samples each day, and those are what we consider SUMA canisters or evacuated canisters. And what they do is they draw in air throughout that 24-hour period, and then the air within that canister is shipped to a laboratory for analysis. There are also sorbent tubes, or what we call passive badges, and those are particularly for the acrylates. And so they sit out, most of them for 8 to 12 hours, and then they have to be rotated. And those actually, if there are any acrylates, they actually adhere to those badges, and then they're shipped off to a laboratory as well for analysis. The other locations we have these blue squares, and then we have these green squares. So those have what we call our area arrays, which is a whole network. Like as you can see, so we have these what we call community. So this is more site-related equipment, and then the rest would be what our community air monitoring. And so those monitor our volatile organic compounds, right? So the things that we would have seen from like the vinyl fluoride in particular, but they'll also see other things. Like if you had some of these near your home, and they'll pick up like cleaning solvents and things like that. They're not discretionary, so it's any volatile organic compound will actually be picked up by these meters. So one day, our alarms go off, and so they run out and they check it out, and it's because someone is actually putting gasoline in a generator, right? So our meter's spiked. So we go out and investigate if there's any elevated readings. We have not had any elevated exceedances, I should say. We've had some elevated readings, right, like that gasoline that I just mentioned, but we haven't had any exceedances since February. So, in addition to the stationary and those roving monitoring locations, we also have the roving vehicles. Now these roving vehicles actually, so they run down Taggart and through the residential area and cross back over on Pleasant, and they continually monitor this area. And these are particularly monitoring for that butyl acrylate, that really smelly butyl acrylate. So these continue to run through our working hours each day. Those are not 24 hours. Those are strictly during the working hours. So moving on to the soil operations, as I mentioned, right, so one of the other things that we try to do is, because there's a potential for dust on the vehicles, all of the vehicles are power washed prior to leaving the work area. So even if I'm out checking on the frac, like the mobile tanks or the roll-off area, even if I just go in there, my vehicle has to be power washed before I can exit the area. So any vehicle that's entering it, whether a waste hauling vehicle or a delivery vehicle or just the nosy ops chief checking on things, they still have to get power washed before we leave the area. This one in particular, this is near. This looks like soil pile number 4, I believe. It's 3 or 4. 4. I'm going to give you a little more example where we're at. So this would be that soil pile number 4 that I just showed you. And we have soil pile 3. Now, we used to have pile 4 over here. We used to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 was our great big one. So all of these piles are gone. And the only 2 piles that remain are these numbers 3 and 4 that remain on site. All of the other soil has been removed. And that is in an effort because the next thing we're going to start working on is car scrapping area 4. We'll talk a little bit more about that next. So, car scrapping area 3, just going to hit on that. We're wrapping this area up, is on the north sides of the tracks. So when I got here, so the burn pits, as we talked about last time, were approximately in this area and in this area. Some of the cars were, drug up there. Afterwards, like the isobutylene car was up there and it was transferred and then it was loaded and hauled off site. A lot of the cars, they were cut up in that area. So another area of potential contamination. So elevated to be part of, the aggressive cleanup at this point. So throughout this area, again, it was gridded out and then sampled. Same as we did with the tracks to ensure that we can clear those areas. I have an example. Clear those areas and ensure that we're getting the contamination of concern. So as we did with the tracks, this entire area was put into 50-foot grids. And so you can see these blue areas. These are actually just cleared. They should show up tomorrow as green. But this is kind of in that area, that burn pit, and just same in this area. So you can tell, we were able to pretty much tell where those burn pits were, and we had to dig a little bit deeper in those areas. So in between these areas, a little bit less of a scrape. It got to clean sooner. So this is an area, we'd put in stone in this area, and we were able to drive in this area. So this was sampled later because we had to scrape about 2 foot of stone, and then we used the geoprobe to clean, to pull the samples in that area. So it was pretty, little bit more labor intensive. So this area is about wrapped up. These areas, we're still waiting on some analysis, and then we'll be able to determine if we need additional excavation work, or the red one for sure needs some additional excavation, or if we're about done with that area. So this would be the north side of the tracks. Nope, you're good. So this is right here. Yep, and then this is the area. So basically, they drug those cars up onto that area, in which they cut them up with different pieces of equipment before they were hauled off site. So we're going to talk a little bit about liquids in a second, but just to give you an idea, over 26 million gallons of liquids have been shipped off site to date. And over 80,000, nearly 81,000 tons of solids have been shipped off site to date. So this is car scrapping area 4. And I wanted to hit on car scrapping area 4 because a little bit different tactic than we've taken in other areas. I asked Charles to help me with this photo in particular because I wanted a picture to give you an idea. The sheet piling along the tracks, and then to kind of show this whole wide area, and it's much broader than this, but just to kind of give you a perspective. So in this area in particular, the intent is to, let me back up. So in all of the other areas, we actually scraped, like in the tracks, we removed the ballast and we removed a foot of soil. And then we would screen that soil and then sample it, right? And then based on that analytical, we would stockpile that soil and we would clear the grid. But all of that soil still had to be sampled and characterized for a disposal facility. So so the excavation work happened really quick, but on the back end, it kind of slowed us down because we had to wait for that analytical before we could start shipping the waste off site. In this situation, because as I showed you, we only have two areas to stockpile soil any longer. This was our largest area to stockpile soil. The intent is we're actually going to grid this entire area off and start, we're using geoprobes to take these samples to characterize that waste in place. So that's not the clearance sample. We'll still have to sample once the excavation's complete, but this allows us to actually excavate the soil and put it directly into the trucks, and then it can be hauled off for disposal immediately. There are some good and bad to both of them, right? So it would have been nice to do this with all of the excavations, but it's time consuming to get there, and the other ones can be, relatively quick. Whereas this one, we've got some dewatering issues. We know that there's some water moving through this area that we anticipate having some challenges with. So the intent is, while we're doing these waste characterization samples, we're actually trying to identify how far out the contamination goes in each direction. And then what the intent is to put this sheet piling will actually encompass the entire area of excavation so that we can excavate and manage the water within that border.
What do you mean there's water moving through this area?
So it's kind of like it's not the deep aquifer, but there is it's almost, and I'm not a geologist. I should get somebody else in the room to talk about it. But there seems to be like some perched water that's always moving through this area.
And what that water is communicating with what? Where is it going?
So we're collecting, it's coming from the wetland, but anything that enters that area, we're actually collecting it and it gets moved into the big blue tanks, and then it's hauled off for disposal. So all of that water currently is collected and transported off-site for disposal.
Is that where the mines are?
We can talk about the mines after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we anticipate that we are going to run into some challenges within this area. So moving into that, so for the water operations, as you know, the two big blue tanks, they actually are a lot of water it's directly going into those tanks, so that they can be managed. We don't have as many vac trucks running around the site. A lot of the water is directly pumped into these tanks, so it can be a little bit easier managed and less traffic around site. So in addition, so for the outside water, right, for the Sentinel monitoring and the groundwater sampling plan, currently there are 15 Sentinel wells, which you can see this location. So you've got different 15 Sentinel wells around site, and there's 5 municipal wells, and those are sampled weekly. Ohio EPA does oversight. And then in addition to that, there have been, I think, over 700 drinking water wells that have samples, not 700 wells, but 700, because some of them have been sampled like over 6 times. But I know over 700 samples have been taken throughout Ohio and Pennsylvania. And so there haven't been any exceedances of any of the train-related waste contaminants that we've been looking for throughout this area. And there is a groundwater sampling plan that was recently approved, and so we're working through learning more. And today I found out that they're proposing installing some more Sentinel monitoring wells. So even though there hasn't been any exceedances or anything, having those Sentinel monitoring wells around the site, both at a shallow depth, so around 20-ish feet, and then at a deeper depth, which I was told, was about 60 to 70 feet. Those are our first line of defense to ensure, if anything was to travel through there, it would be identified very quickly before it was an impact to anyone. So the groundwater characterization work plan, this was just recently approved. Again, like we have all of those different wells throughout the area to continue to monitor things to ensure that there hasn't been any migration of contamination off-site.
And those are also monitored weekly.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Then the surface water sampling locations, there are 21 surface water locations. These for, gosh, I think the first 4 months were sampled daily. Now they're on a 3-day rotation. And so these are continue to be sampled. And we have not had any exceedances since March. We actually have been showing non-detect for the vinyl chloride and the butyl acrylates. Or all the acrylates, rather.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say to this one is Ohio EPA has a really cool interactive graphic on their website. If you're interested in that, we can get you the link for it. But you can literally click on each contaminant, and you can see its profile over time. Back in February and March, you could see where the high levels of contaminants were in the water, and you can start to see it come down as you get closer and closer to mid-March to April. So it's really neat the way they did it.
What's the rainbows doing there, Mark?
Well, yeah, good question, and I've got an answer for you. We'll get that after the presentation as well, Jake. Thanks.
So Sulphur Run and Leslie Run. So you alluded to some of the things that we've been assessing over the past few months. So initially we had done what we call air knifing, where they are actually injecting a tube into the sediment, and they were pushing air into there. And the idea was to liberate anything that was under that sediment and bring it up to the surface, which is that sheen that you would see, that rainbow or like a kind of a silvery looking sheen across the water. And the idea was to re-liberate it and get it to float, and then we would have a booming system set up just downstream. So the intent was to try to move that material, get it back up to the surface and then move it down so that we could collect it. We had moved over to the flushing because we found it was to be a bit more effective, and we didn't need to be going as deep as that air was going. So this process was kind of an interim measure. As Mark just said, that there was a plan that has been recently approved, but we didn't want to not be doing something in these waterways until that plan was approved. So those of us in operations really pushed to do some type of measures in these waterways, even if they weren't very aggressive, because our ecological folks were concerned about what we were doing to the ecosystem. So we kind of came up with a medium effort, so that we were taking some measures and we could, be putting a good faith effort forward, but without potentially, interrupting or injuring any type of, sensitive habitats, especially in Leslie Run. So that's how we came up with that flushing operation. So how it works is there's a team of folks that go through and they assess the waterway. And they actually go in and they disturb the sediment. They turn over rocks. And they try to see if they can get that sheen to appear. And so then from that, they actually take what they call these qualitative sheen observations. And they actually number it, right? So a very slight sheen is 1. And then a more substantial sheen is actually, identified as a 3. And then they score the entire creek or Sulphur Run. They score the whole thing. They move all the way through the system and they score it, right? So especially some areas are, orange and purples, right? So the heaviest sheen, we might actually even still get some odor off of that. So we're still keep addressing these areas over and over and over again. And so they would assess it, then we would wait, we needed to wait for a rain event, and then we would come through and we would start disturbing that sediment again and again and again. And this is not the end all be all, right? We know that we still have a lot of work yet to do. But in the interim, we were still trying to make it so that this material was moving downstream and so we could capture it. Now that we have this plan that was just approved, now we'll be moving towards sampling it and looking at what truly we can do in probably a much more aggressive fashion. So do you want to keep going on that?
Yeah, a couple things on Sulphur Run. As I mentioned in the beginning, this was a real sticking point with a lot of you. That why did it take so long, right? And it's a great question. And quite frankly, a lot of us were extremely frustrated that it took so long.
Very frustrating.
And again, a number of us have talked about it one-on-one and in these meetings. But at the end of the day, the reason Sulphur Run was separated from Leslie Run and the creeks beyond Leslie Run was because Sulphur Run, as you heard during the surface water session, if we were here, is a limited use stream. So it's not a very ecologically diverse stream, so we can be a little bit more aggressive in Sulphur Run. So, I wouldn't be surprised if some decisions are made once that characterization assessment is done to do some more aggressive tactics to clean that up. Leslie Run's a different story. Leslie Run is a cold water habitat. It's sensitive. Our ecological partners have told us, don't dig it out. Do everything you can to preserve the rock beds, the stream banks, and so the assessment is going to be a lot more involved on the ecological side. It's going to be, we're not just looking for gross contamination. We want to see, what they call bugs and critters in the bottom of the river are doing. So it's going to be a lot more involved than what we're doing in Sulphur Run. So that's why it's taking long. We got to get it right because Ohio DNR and Ohio EPA don't want an aggressive tactic in Leslie Run. So before I get to you, Jamie, I want to answer Jake's question. You asked about the sheen. So if you look at our data from the very first weekend of the response, you see a lot of petroleum-related compounds that are, very high in concentration. From I think diesel range through the crude range, carbon series. That's where the sheen is likely coming from. It's likely coming from those petroleum products. Now, can I tell you that with 100% certainty? No, because
So it's not, when you guys are irritating it, is it off-gassing?
No.
yeah, well, there's, like the Trish said, every now and again you'll get a little bit of an odor, which is reminiscent.
But we don't
yeah.
detect anything on our meters. Like you might smell it for just a moment, but then it passes.
Yeah.
But we're not detecting anything with any of our air monitoring equipment.
Yeah. So again, it's likely those petroleum products. We actually did. I was talking to our principal scientist about that, and they actually collected some of the sheen and had it analyzed, and they couldn't detect anything above our analytical levels. But that doesn't matter because we have the analytical from the early days of the response, and it shows those petroleum products present. So that's likely what that is. But also there's the butyl, there's the vinyl that's also mixed in with that. So it's a cocktail.
Okay,
And
and
it is.
as far as what's in the tanks, how about them being open? Are they off-gassing? Because I see the tanker trucks, I live right next to it. The tanker trucks are not getting washed off when they're getting filled up at the.
No, they would not be.
No, there's
What
completely
is the reason
clean.
behind why they're not getting?
Because they never have gone into the hot zone, so they're not exposed to the contaminated soils.
So the water that comes out of them tanks.
So the water
there's
goes
no, there's no splashing, or when they're getting filled in these tanks, there's no contamination.
No, no, actually, it's done, the loading arms are done, so that it goes into a hatch right on top of the tanks. There's no splash. Actually, this is one of the most impressive loading racks, that I've seen installed. But no, it goes straight into here, into these hatches, and it's monitored, very closely. There is, we do, as I said, we do air monitoring throughout, the entire area, and there's no off-gassing, it's really, there's really at this point, 27 million gallons of water.
What you guys do different than Carnegie Mellon, that shows a different levels?
Yeah, theirs was continuous air monitoring, so that's a great question. So the air monitoring that Carnegie Mellon and Texas A&M did was, it was like the van. Remember the van that drives around for butyl acrylate? It's the same exact technology. It's it's called PTR-MS technology.
So it's gonna pick up different. than-
Theirs was specifically designed to do a full VOC scan. Now, when they do a full VOC scan, they're getting estimated concentrations, right? We have ours. Well, it's Norfolk's now. Theirs is calibrated specifically to butyl acrylate, okay? Because that's one of our principal contaminants of concern. So when they did theirs, yes, they saw the acrolein. They saw several other compounds. Their data wasn't much different than ours. It was higher, but they were doing continuous monitoring, so they would see a spike, where our standing air monitors would only, if the air was flowing in this direction, our standing monitor is only going to see it when it passes by that canister. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but just one more question. When they're doing their continuous, it's the same way with us breathing it 7 days a week. Are you guys still going by the monitoring of, being at a workplace compared to 7 days a week, 24 hours a day?
So the standards that were set up by ATSDR were actually not for OSHA workplace standards. I know somebody said that recently in a news article, and that's not correct. We are using OSHA standards for our workers on site, but we are using residential standards that were set up by our health agencies for everything off-site.
And
Does that make sense?
where do we get the different numbers so we can look at the difference between residential and
I can get them to you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Jamie, you had a question about mines before you ask your other question.
I have so many questions. All this thing's done is create more questions for me, Mark.
Okay.
So yeah, when you were talking about, I believe you said it was like the car, scrapping area 4. Why were you anticipating issues? Did that have anything to do with the mine that runs the whole way along
So-
Route 0?
We don't, what I was going to tell you about mines is we don't have any concerns about mines unless we dig deep enough where we could potentially impact historical mines, and we don't think that's going to happen. We got is deep on the east end of the track removal as 11, I think it was 11 feet over there, maybe even deeper, until we got the clean. That's probably the deepest our excavation will go in any location. So we don't expect in car scrapping area 4 to get that deep. We probably, if we do hit a wet area, it could get deeper. The burn pits got down around 8 feet. So we don't anticipate having to go deep enough for any historical structures that were underneath that area would be impacted.
Not structures, but we did identify there's some fill, right? So there's some bricks and there's some things like that. So for us, and then, like I mentioned, that water, that there is some water flowing through that area. So those are the types of things that so we're gonna excavate like in cells within that area so that we can dewater it and identify like what we have, right? With all of those bricks and different things like that. So those are the kind of challenges rather than just being soil.
Is there a chance that these chemicals binded or stuck to the petroleum? I'm not sure, I'm not a chemist, but is there any way that the other more dangerous chemicals were binding to this petroleum that's in the sediment?
So are you asking, would they have combined and then created something different? Or are you asking if they're just
Or if
traveling
they're-
together?
I mean, either way.
Okay.
Could they have combined and caused something different?
So-
Or kind of like petroleum to me seems like it would be a little sticky,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe it's a stupid
You're thinking it's,
question.
no, it's not.
No,
You're-
it's not.
Scientist.
You're thinking it's a
Not at all.
transport. You're thinking it's a transport mechanism. The butyl acrylate is actually considered kind of a sticky compound as well, and it, concerns with that, as it relates to, the way it attracts to sediments and structures and sticks to things. It's kind of similar to petroleum. Yes, the heavier organics could be a transport mechanism for the lighter organics. So the vinyl chloride is a very light organic material. And it gets bound up in that other liquid. Sure, it could be a transport mechanism. I don't know enough about chemistry to tell you if any of those compounds could have created another one. What I can tell you is when our analytical work is done, we are seeing the individual compounds. And we also analyze for what we call tentatively identified compounds. So in the analytical process, they'll ask the lab, if you see any other spikes or signatures that don't match up with a specific compound, let us know what you think that is based on the shape of the mass spectrometer that comes through. So yeah, so we look for that stuff.
And I'll just ask one more question about the water, but I have a bunch of questions about air that I'll save.
Okay.
So I've been at a couple different meetings with, I believe it was the ODNR down in Negley, and I believe it may have even been the ODNR in here. And I remember sitting in this very room and hearing him say that water is close to perfect. And I remember giggling at that, because there's no way in hell it's close to perfect. And that's kind of what you're saying now. And this is where it's hard to trust because we get all these mixed messages. According to ODNR, these streams were cleaned up, and Dr. Chai's going down there and poking this stuff up and still seeing the rainbows. So it's kind of
really hard.
confusing to me.
So I think it's a miscommunication, Jamie. What they were probably saying was those streams are, before the incident occurred, those streams were a very sensitive ecological cold water habitat that's home to sensitive and endangered species. That's probably what they were saying. If that's not what it was, then I know when Bill Zawiski was here from Ohio EPA, he was saying that, that the water quality just south of Carbon Hill Road the sediment quality looks really good, right? But north of Carbon Hill Road, you can still see some sheen pockets, right? That's still there. And what he was very explicit, and ODNR feels that way, Ohio EPA feels this way, that we don't just go in there and hog out the stream banks and destroy those habitats. So if that's the way it's being portrayed, then that's unfortunate because it shouldn't be portrayed that way. We know there's still
Right.
contamination.
I'll find the videos.
Okay.
And I just wonder, why did it take 6 months? I mean, you're saying, yeah, we were like, why did it take 6 months? Well, why did it take 6
Yeah.
months?
Yeah, it's probably Robin's question too,
And I
right?
do have air questions at the end. too. Sorry. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so this is a hard one for me because like Trish and I both agree that, for whatever reason it took so long. We would have much rather have been in there assessing those streams much sooner. But we have a unified command of, it was 6, now it's 5 organizations, okay? We have what we call assisting and cooperating agencies, which is another roughly 20 agencies. I'm sorry?
Who dipped out?
Our Region 3 office. So it was EPA Region 5, EPA Region 3. So they still call in, but they're not officially a participant. So we have all these assisting and cooperating agencies. We give every single one of those stakeholders the ability to review plans that are pertinent to their authorities. That's why it's taken so long. And when you have that many people involved, we have this many eyes on it. I mean, the whole country's still watching this response. We need to make sure that those plans are tight. And we gave Norfolk Southern a very aggressive timeline to give us the initial plans. So they came in incomplete. The timelines we gave them was unrealistic, right? So the plans came in incomplete, then it became a back and forth. And we only have so many scientists to review 14 plans. So, you're getting to one week, and then you're getting to another week. And, Robin and I have talked about this a lot. One of the lessons.
Human lives. I mean,
One-
this is
right.
what, you know what I'm saying?
I get it, Jamie.
That's our frustration right now, Mark.
I get it.
I'm not saying it,
I get it.
towards you, but it's been 6
Yeah.
months now. These are our children's lives. This
Yeah.
isn't just we went back and forth type thing. Like, we see the contamination. when are we gonna get the
Yeah.
answers, and when are we gonna get people out of these homes that are making them sick, that are still in their homes?
So
Norfolk
again,
Southern's pulling out, and
Again.
they're pointing the fingers at you.
going back to the streams, your frustration is our frustration. What I was getting ready to say was, that when we get to the lessons learned, when we're done with all this construction and all this, setting up all these long-term monitoring plans and making sure your groundwater is safe for 30 years, right? When we get all those things set up, that's when we'll sit back and say, how could we have done this better? That's.
Well, I hope I can sit down with you and we can go through that.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Robin.
Okay, I have to do it, Mark.
I
So
do.
here's my beef with that. We're losing data. We're losing data in the creeks that are feeding our aquifer. It's already into the ground. So if we're not going to be able to sample those creeks adequately before 5 months, how can we have assurances? I mean, you and I talked about this, that the acrylates could seep under the ground and now will not be caught on a creek analysis, but still pose a risk. So that's point one I have, and it leads into my next point for you to address, meaning why are we changing what we're testing for based on what's seen in the air, what's seen in the oil, or soil, and in the water? It's a feedback loop, and they should both be being tested for controls that do not change based on what the train consist had. Am I making sense?
You are, completely. So, and again, the rest of you aren't privy to the many conversations we've had about this. So what Robin's saying is, one of her frustrations is we now have identified 29 contaminants of concern, right? Based on the chemicals that were found in the train derailment and based on what we've detected in various media as we've collected samples, as the company's collected samples over time. So we have 29 chemicals of concern. Now, in the potable water program that affects her, those 29 chemicals are the chemicals that we're looking for. Now, we have, to answer one of your questions, there has been sediment sampling done, right? It's just not been extensive, okay? But there has been sediment sampling done that helped inform on what those 29 chemicals are, okay? But let me finish first. Then, when we get to the Sentinel Well program, okay, that's the potable water program. Then we get to the Sentinel Well program. There's another family of chemicals introduced, PFAS. The reason we've added PFAS to, if you know what PFAS are, they call them the forever chemicals, PFAS, PFOA. I'm not even going to try and tell you what the acronym means. The PFAS chemicals, there was a little bit of some of the firefighting foam was used, very little, but there was some firefighting foam used that contains PFAS. So that was very site-specific. That's a very site-specific potential chemical. So in the Sentinel program, we have added that just as a double check. These chemicals are, much like dioxins, are common in the environment. We expect to see them, but if we see them at levels outside of normal, then it could mean additional action. The groundwater sampling plan we are doing a full line of semi-volatiles and volatiles to start because the train derailment area has some legacy contamination. They're train tracks. There's historic spills. There's historic petroleum products. We've run into a lot of spilled material that had nothing to do with the train derailment. So we're doing a full scan analysis, at least to start, until we can narrow that list down. We may end up narrowing it down to the original 29 chemicals that we know are priority chemicals based on what was on the train, what are the byproducts from the burn, primary byproducts from the burn, and what have we detected in downstream. So,
One more point.
yeah.
So the flyer that came out listed, 129 chemicals that they're testing for in the municipal water and 29 in wells. Now, I understand what you're saying. There's some legacy things that are of a concern. There's some quality assurance data. But if you subtract those two factors out, there should be no difference in what you're testing in the wells versus the city wells. Is that correct?
So again, I would have to, on the municipal side, I haven't gone back and talked to Ohio EPA, who's monitoring that program, to get you the information you had asked me for a while back. So that's still on my to-do list.
Okay, I'm
but-
done now. There's just a
Yeah.
continuing frustration.
Yeah.
loop, 29 versus 129, that's a
Yeah.
big difference,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, but like I said, we're pretty confident in the 29. So again, as things change, you guys will be the first to know. So,
I got a couple, go ahead.
yep, get a.
Mark, so we obviously have moved into the question and answer session. We want to give an opportunity for everybody to ask their questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll bring your microphone and move on. So we have a couple microphones, one on this side,
Get Diana,
and
then
one
we
on,
get Jake.
on the left. All right.
Okay, so you have these sentinel wells set up. What, is there a treatment plan if chemicals are found at the sentinel wells to keep it from getting into the municipal wells?
So as far as I know, we haven't gone down that road yet. I mean, right now it's just an early warning system. Now we know what the different technologies would be to address contaminated groundwater, even perched groundwater, which the shallow sentinel wells would be looking at. So we know what the various technologies could be. It could be pump and treat, through filtration beds. It could be air stripping, depending on the chemical. There, ion exchange. There are a number of different technologies we could use, but you don't know until you know what the contaminants are that have gotten to that point, right? So again, I'll check with our chief science person, but I don't think we've gone down that road yet.
But so you have 129 chemicals municipally that you're checking at the municipal level.
Well, not just that, also the groundwater. The groundwater sampling plan has a huge list of chemicals because of where those wells are located, basically underneath the tracks.
Okay, so I guess my concern is there is a way to treat all of those chemicals that you're testing for. There is a way to remove them
Yep.
before they
And it
go.
can either be done, and the good news is, I don't know if you saw, can you guys go to the slide that had the groundwater path, groundwater flow direction? So the groundwater flow direction is really interesting here. South of the site, it moves from Pennsylvania southwest towards Ohio. North of the site, that aquifer moves from northwest towards the derailment site. And we don't believe that the municipal wells will ever be impacted, even if groundwater gets impacted, because of groundwater flow. But you know what? You never say never, right? You can never say. There's no absolutes. So there's no absolutes that, even though we're cleaning up to groundwater standards with the cleanup, there's no guarantee that, some contaminants might have found a preferential pathway somewhere and it was missed. There's no guarantees. That's why we need long-term monitoring. That's why the community, once we go away, whenever that is, months or years down the road, keep an eye on what that plan says and what the data shows. I think that's going to be one of the most important things for the community to maintain awareness on long term. Jake, then Jamie.
Yes, it has to do with the petroleum. I know petroleum floats, okay? So with this being the settlement at the bottom, the guys are saying it's petroleum-based or whatever, that's in the bottom of these creeks. Now, right at the bottom of the hill going into Negley, there's a little walking trail. Now, kids has been down there playing in the creek. There's been no signs put up like there was when Myrax was up in Salem and come down the creek. There was danger, keep out. I have not seen no signs besides testing in progress.
Yeah.
Also, is there anything being monitored about our wildlife drinking out of these creeks? Because right now, I seen fawns down there, I see baby coons, and is there any monitoring going on with our animals?
Yeah.
Is it safe for me to go shoot a deer and be able to eat it?
I can't answer the second part of your question, but I can answer the first part of your question about animals. Again, Tricia told you what the surface water sampling has shown. We haven't seen elevated
But
levels.
they're walking in it.
I get that. But, yes, they could potentially be exposed.
Okay.
All right, period.
That's one.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
But, their exposure potential is probably pretty low based on all the sampling and data that we have. Your question about how the river is posted, it just sounds like you don't like the language on the signs.
The language
Yeah.
is where there's kids playing in the
Yeah.
creek that says keep out,
Yeah.
Chemicals spill or whatever until you guys get it cleaned up instead of testing in progress
Yeah.
and it's not red, it's nothing, and kids are down there jumping from the little vine or
Yeah.
the little tree at the bottom of the walk thing into the creek,
Understood.
You can't necessarily make that connection between testing in progress and stay out.
Okay. All right,
I think is the point,
point taken,
yeah.
point taken. All right.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen them playing over at the park in the creek, I've seen them playing down in Negley in the creek, I mean, it's becoming.
Yeah, I wouldn't be concerned about Negley, like I said, I've walked the creek myself,
Well,
but,
okay, Leslie Run
Yeah.
right at below,
yeah,
above Carbon Hill.
yeah, above Carbon Hill, yeah. Okay, point taken.
Okay.
Jamie?
So in the last newsletter, it said something about you guys starting, I don't forget how it was worded, like some kind of dams or something to protect the storm drains. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was on the front page of the newsletter.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what it
Yeah,
was
Trish,
called.
yeah, you take, actually, so let's come back to that question, you had a
Okay.
question, while Tricia looks.
Thank you for the recording. So, going back to car scrapping area 4?
Yeah.
I guess you're gonna call that. Grid, how big is the grid?
Okay.
When she said.
They were 25, or they were 50-foot grids on the north side, are we doing 50 again, or are we doing 25, or?
The grids that we're doing right now is for waste characterization. So those are completely different.
And you're
So,
geoprobing in each grid? Or are you geoprobing?
Oh, I apologize. So the grids that I'm talking about, for waste characterization, it's not, we don't have to do like a 25-foot grid. But once we excavate, we will be doing those grids. I think they're gonna be 50-foot grids, but we are still waiting for that plan. So I think it's gonna be a 50-foot grid, but it might be, but I'm not sure yet. We still have to review that plan.
Okay, so you,
But it'll still be gridded out. Right now, we don't require, so the landfills, like the treatment facilities, they really kind of dictate how many samples they need per cubic foot, right? And so, they say they only need one every 1,000, but we're going way over above that. So, but the gridding process will be done once the excavation has been placed.
okay, so then you talked about within each grid, then you're gonna dewater.
As needed, right, if we come across water.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dig down,
How are
remove.
you going to? I'm Denise, by the way.
Hi,
My
Denise.
brother Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
We're the Lake family.
Ah, very good.
Okay.
So, how are you going to dewater it? How are you?
Yeah.
Being there for the last 55 years, you're not going to dewater it. So that's my
So-
question.
So that's the first intent, which that's part, right? And that's why we said we're gonna have challenges when we get over there, right? So that the first intent was the sheet piling, and we're hoping that the sheet piling we can at least dewater it from, because the sheet piling is going down over 20 feet deep,
You have to go deeper than that.
Yeah, just
and that's the part where we're gonna find out. That was the concern, right? That, and we were just discussing that today, was whether did we need to go even deeper for that sheet piling. And if we do, right, so then that center portion, we hope to dewater and keeping, because those are supposed to be watertight sheet piling. So the intent was to keep the water on the outside, so we only had to dewater the center section, and we would do that in cells. And dewater each cell, backfill, dewater, backfill, dewater, backfill. Now, if you're telling me that we have to go a lot deeper, we have a lot of lessons learned, I'm guessing. So, and that's, we were having that same discussion today, that there was some fear that we were gonna be in too deep. That our sheet piling wasn't deep enough.
And
So
when we,
is there a plan in place so far, or are we just at the grid plan to?
Right now, we're just at the
Basics.
waste characterization plan, yeah.
Okay.
and like I said earlier, when we were on the east end of the tracks, all the way on the east, we had to go down really deep because water and product kept coming into the hole, right? Good news there was it helped us collect all the product.
Right.
And it made once we got the confirmation sampling, it made it go quicker. But we had to go really deep because we were battling water issues. So so it doesn't surprise me.
Right, right.
Stay tuned.
You just have a time frame of when?
We're hoping to be done characterizing within the next week and a half or so.
It'll probably be 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
Um,
and then we'll move into
But through this waste characterization, right, we're doing deep cores. So we're trying to get an idea through those cores at the same time what our necessity is gonna be for that sheet piling.
So if you run into so many feet of fill, are you going beyond the fill? Are
Depends
you
on if it's contaminated. Yeah, if it's contaminated, yeah.
Oh, for excavation?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
get it all.
we're going,
Groundwater standards.
Okay.
Cross your
Yeah.
fingers for us, please.
yeah.
Jamie? Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
You haven't looked at it?
found it.
I was gonna read it just so everybody can hear it. It said that the site stormwater inspection was completed on July 8th, and additional stormwater controls were put in place to improve the existing stormwater management plan. Going forward, weekly stormwater inspections will determine if and when additional controls are needed.
That's
So
the,
with
silt
that,
fencing.
I had a couple of questions. Why was this just now started to be put into place? Why are we not doing in-home air testing when we know that storm drains do leak into basements? There was a potential pathway to exposure found in my basement, clear back on February 14th. So if this water is potentially getting into these homes that's contaminated from the storm drains, that's the exact same thing as the creek water being contaminated and coming into my home. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm told in East Palestine, they have to do dye tests on the storm drains because they're so old and dilapidated before they can sell a house. In fact, when I called the municipal building, they only claim to have a crayon-drawn map of the storm drains that Gary Clark did years ago. But I've also been told that the EPA actually has been to East Palestine threatening fines in the past due to these dilapidated storm drains. So I guess my question is, why aren't we doing this in-home testing where these waters come in? Why are we just now starting this, stormwater thing? And why didn't we start testing basements way back when?
So, a couple things. There's a lot of questions in there, kind of unrelated. So let's get to the first one. The stormwater management plan, Tricia, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been stormwater management going on this entire time.
Correct.
One of the problems has been the sediment traps and the storm sewer openings were starting to get overwhelmed, right? I mean, just because of all the particles that were getting in there over time, and they were getting overwhelmed. So they developed a stormwater management plan to address the sedimentation along with all the silt fence work that was already being done. So
Yeah, and so,
it's basically putting it into writing.
right,
That
so
don't
we
make-
wanted them to do, like, they were instituting these best management practices, right? So you're in the area, you saw that they put those mats down to try to get, catch the sediment that was going into the drain. They weren't working, right? They would get filled up, and then the water would back up, and eventually the water would go down the drain, and so there was just
So this is
instituting-
contaminated soil?
No. This is just like the regular.
I mean, that just kind of confuses me, Mark, because I know when Jake and I talked to you at one of the meetings and we talked about the storm drains, you didn't even know where they ran yet. You said, oh, let me look into that and get back to you. And then you said that all those streams run into Sulphur Run and we're
yeah.
testing Sulphur Run.
Yeah, so when we talked about the storm drains, we had that conversation. I thought you were talking about the street-based storm drains, right? You were talking about basement basement drains. Is basically what you were talking about. I thought
Well,
you
I
were
mean,
talking. I thought you were talking
Any
about
of
the street.
any of
Yeah.
the drains that leak
Yeah,
into basements.
so I looked in,
I mean,
yeah,
great.
and I looked into the storm drains themselves, and, there was, there wasn't a problem with respect to contamination in those locations. The basement drains, yes, if we come across basements that may have had water backup, I've got two on the list right now. We will look into doing some additional assessment on those. And as we
Are you
learn.
publicly announcing that? Because I know people that have storm water in their basements from the storm drains.
Coming soon, yeah.
6 months later, coming soon. I'm not
Well,
saying you
again.
personally, Mark.
so
I'm not
the-
saying you
but-
personally.
But you also have to understand, Jamie, this is important. when we did the initial home screening program, the return to home program, if we came across any situations where there was obvious contamination in homes through vapor, we did do a vinyl chloride tube when our meters, kicked up. Now, your situation was unique.
Yeah.
Your situation was unique. I don't know if you had spikes, volatile spikes.
No, I had nothing at all
Yeah.
in my home, and what
Yeah.
it was is when, they said go back in.
Yeah.
When I look back at those videos, I'm asking, what all chemicals are in our creeks? We don't have a manifest yet. They just, said 3 more chemicals yesterday. I asked for the water testing in the creeks.
3 more chemicals.
There was 3 more chemicals that were released in the news right before that. The evacuation was lifted because we still didn't have the full manifest yet. I can show you these videos. I asked about water sampling in the creek. We did it, results aren't out yet. What about soil sampling? EPA doesn't think we need to do soil sampling. And the only thing they were doing was the air sampling, which you yourself said was not sufficient. So really, our homes have had zero
Hold
testing.
on. I said
ahead.
that, hold on. I said that there were issues with the detection level of butyl acrylate. That was one compound.
Right.
The air monitoring was sufficient for the general volatile organic chemicals, and butyl acrylate also has an odor threshold that's well below threat levels. So the air monitoring program was adequate to assess for acute exposures. However,
Right.
we recognized that there was an issue with that particular the levels of that chemical they could detect.
Right,
So-
and we still haven't retested homes.
No, and
Or tested, and this is my thing, is when are they gonna stop this temporary relocation? They keep pointing the finger at the EPA saying, this is the EPA's temporary relocation plan, and as soon as the EPA says, and we've already upheld our end of the bargain, we have temporarily relocated people until the tracks were remediated.
Norfolk Southern, that's their program, and they have
Right.
indicated that they will not make a change to the temporary relocation program until Unified Command determines it's appropriate. So it's not,
So it could just happen, that's not what they're telling people.
Well, I'm just telling you,
yeah.
that's what we've been told.
Well, I have videos, you know that, Mark,
Yeah, I
of
do.
them, blatantly telling me.
Well, I'm on video
They-
and I just said it, so.
Right, as soon as, the EPA tells them, and they could, stop reimbursing us today with no notice because they've already fulfilled their end of the deal that they made with you to
I doubt they'll cut it off.
relocate people. Well, they are. They're starting to cut people off, Mark.
Well,
And they're starting to make it harder to get reimbursements for people. So when, our government is saying, Governor DeWine in his disaster declaration says there are no unmet needs of the community, some people are gonna be forced back into homes that still haven't been tested. Back into homes that nobody's even told us what to clean with yet. Do you use bleach to clean vinyl chloride? Does anybody know what we should use to clean it with?
Volatile organics that were involved in this train derailment should not be in anybody's homes. They should not be they're volatile organics, they break down quickly in the environment.
What if it's
So-
in your basement?
It's not in my basement.
If there's vapors coming out of your basement, like I just
Why
don't
would there
feel
be,
like,
why would there be vapors coming out of the basement?
if there's stormwater coming in.
So,
that's what he told me, that if
as I
that's
told you,
vaporized-
as I told you
Yeah.
earlier, if we are aware of those types of cases, we will assess those types of cases.
But what
Those
I'm
are
saying
unique.
is, shouldn't that have been assessed before we were put back into our homes? Or shouldn't this been mentioned by
Again,
Norfolk Southern?
it was like there was a screening program that was put into place. So, again, I'm glad to hear that you didn't have any detections in your home when that
There was
happened.
no screening of my house. They told me,
Oh, I thought
they
you
walked
said-
through it, they said it's safe, go home.
So,
and I
so they
threw a
didn't,
fit.
they didn't monitor with VOC meters?
Oh, yeah, they walked through my house with that little meter, and I kept questioning them about water and soil sampling, and I said, I want the railroad to come down and look at my house. I live right across the creek, but my address sends you up on the hill on West Main. So I said, I want you to come down and physically see how close my house is. Terry came down and he said, I see why you're concerned. I will send in a toxicologist from CTEH. So when you're talking about this screening, had I not thrown a fit and had my big mouth that I have, I would have went back in that home with my daughter.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you talk about how do we gain this trust back, first of all, we need consistent stories from all the different ODNR, EPA, instead of, you know, saying opposite things. And when you talk about trust broke to that level,
Okay, Jamie, I get the point, and we've talked about this many times, so.
I know, I'm just-
So I appreciate
No.
it.
it's just
Yeah, that's-
more, I mean, I think people should feel good that some of this stuff is coming out now, but it doesn't feel good. Even though we've known this, to actually hear it, we don't want to be right. You know,
Again,
and I just fear that there are people in homes that are exactly like my home that still have not been tested, or it hasn't publicly said, if this water comes into your basement, come see us. Again, this isn't just, I know this is a job to you guys, but this is my family. This is my community.
This is not just a job to us. Don't say that.
So I imagine there are other people that have questions. Please raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone.
Zuza?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, you said you guys tested the sheen, the rainbow sheen, and you said there's petroleum products in there?
No, so what I explained, sorry if I wasn't clear. What I explained was when we collected water samples from, the chemicals that were in the water those first couple nights, we saw levels of carbon-based organics that are consistent with petroleum products. Okay, I can send you that data. If
Yeah, I
you're
would
interested in
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
sure
you.
thing. Now, one thing before I get to Robin, I told you guys at the start I would give you an update on what I learned today from the dioxin tests that were Scott Smith talked about last night. So apparently he had collected a sample along Taggart Road, right next to the roadway, and there's this report that the levels had come back at like 600,000 parts per trillion, right? Which, you know, when I heard that, I'm like, that can't be right. That's just, even the waste, dioxin levels in waste were only in the, hundreds of parts per trillion. So I'm like, that can't be right. So luckily I had a chance to talk to Scott today, and what he was reporting was not the toxic equivalency, which is how you compare dioxin results. He was giving you the full list of all the congeners, toxic or non-toxic, right? So it was not a good way to present the data, and he acknowledged that. The actual TEQ value was much lower, right? It was still elevated, it was still higher than typical background. And we had, as we talked about in our soil sampling program, we've seen 3-4 hits above those typical background levels. So, and they were all along roadways as well. So that piece of data does not surprise us. When it was 600,000, that surprises, but what we're seeing does not. However, it's a good data point for us. So I'm glad he shared it. I know that he has collected a few more samples in that area, so I'm going to be interested to see what those data points come back. And that will help us inform on, that we're getting ready to approve another plan called a full site characterization plan. And pieces of data like that will help us design that sampling plan. So again, I'm glad he shared it. And I asked him in the future, before he starts talking about dioxin toxic equivalency, that he talk to us to make sure we're speaking the same language. Because when I saw that number, I'm like,
the actual levels
it was, I think,
in comparison?
it was 1900. The TEQ value was 1900, which is high.
And what was what you found?
The highest we've seen, or what we see as typical.
What you seen here?
670, I think, was the highest we saw. So it was higher.
You saw it was a lot
1900.
higher.
Yeah, it was double that.
People in that area getting sick?
Well, that's a commercial property,
Right.
and we have samples on either end of that property that are within normal levels. So again,
Nobody's talked to the people that work there, I'm just wondering.
he's aware of it. The owner's aware of it. Yep.
Mark,
Has
there's a
anyone
question in the back.
Yep.
talked to him about being sick?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know he's been contacted. Robin, sorry.
So the geoprobe, I have a question about that. So we talked about needing a different way to assess this area. And we're talking about the benefits and the costs, not literal costs, but the pros and cons, if you will, of what type to use. So I'm going to ask, with only using the geoprobe to do a waste characterization, what's the trade-off?
That's a great question. So, they're still aliquots of land. So when we do waste pile characterization, they go around the waste pile, collect aliquots of different parts of the waste, homogenize it, mix it together, and then they send that to the lab, you get the full spectrum of analysis done, and then the disposal facility gets that analysis, and they let us know whether or not they'll accept the waste, okay? When you do a geoprobe, it's the same thing, it's just punching holes in the ground instead of punching holes in a waste pile.
But it's punching holes in the ground, like at different intervals, right?
Mhm.
At regular, the way we did the other one, I felt like we were getting a more complete picture of the soil. So if we're just picking places to drill down, is there a system to that as how far they can be? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Does it
and
make
it's-
sense?
Oh,
It's-
it's a very robust system. Ohio EPA is actually Ohio EPA has made this they've approved it and gone through it, but it's an extremely robust system. And actually, like I said, the disposal facilities normally require a sample every 1,000 cubic yards. We are actually pulling samples twice that frequency, if not more. And so they are at different depths, right? So and like I said, these are not the confirmation samples that we've got to clean. This is just the waste that's getting shipped to the disposal facility. So, and this is considered a hazardous waste regardless, right? So it's still be going off as a hazardous waste regardless because of the U listing of the vinyl chloride, right? So all of this is going off, but it's still that analytical to ensure if there are higher levels, sometimes it has to go to the incinerator. But yeah, it's essentially, the pros and cons are really, do we excavate it and get it on top of the ground and then wait for the analytical and then load it into trucks? Or do we sample it in the ground, analyze it, determine, our areas, load it in the trucks and haul it off site? So it's whether the waste characterization, there really isn't, I don't really see really a pros or con there. It's more of the transportation side of it and getting it off site. Certainly.
Is that treated water coming back to Ohio? I'm sorry. Because I read an article, and that's why I'm fact checking, that said that when this water is going to other states, they'll treat it, but they will not release it back into the waterways in their state. They're sending it back to Ohio.
That plan's off the table.
That's
So,
off.
yeah, so that was we've looked at different, we tried to, well, we didn't, Norfolk Southern tried to build a large network of disposal options because the disposal facilities we're sending to dispose of water, they wanted to be able to get as many trucks on the road as possible and do it for the lowest amount of cost, right? Simple business
Right.
economics, right? One of the plans was to treat it at a facility at Baltimore and then ship it to Cleveland, which was always a head scratcher to me, how that was more economic. But I'm not the guy that does the numbers, so
Did they do that water
But
waste
that-
treatment plant down here in town?
But that never happened. So that's a great question, Jamie. The water treatment vessels that you see here, they're testing those to see if, right now they're testing those to see if they will effectively treat the water, right? After they have been effectively tested, then Ohio EPA can give them authorization to what it's called a contained in determination. It's just a regulatory term to say, yes, you can treat those. And then those tanks along, I don't know if we have that map. up.
Martin.
Yeah, the tanks along Martin, those are the clean water tanks. So any water that goes in those tanks will be treated and clean. So then at that point, Ohio EPA will then say, yes, that is no longer a hazardous waste. That is clean water.
Then where does it go?
Then it can go anywhere.
Yeah,
It can
anywhere?
It can be taken to any publicly owned treatment works that will accept it. There's a catch to that though. Sewage plants, that's what a POTW is, a sewage plant. Sewage plants don't like clean water. They're designed to, handle dirty water. So they can only accept so much non-dirty water. Otherwise it dilutes the system and screws up their, you know what I mean? I know it's counterintuitive. So we'll see, once it's approved, we'll see what the company decides to do.
There's bacteria in it that eat the.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Exactly.
Well then,
Yeah.
or how much of that are they burning down at WTI?
I don't know anything about
I'm sorry.
WTI. So.
Or Hermitage Thermal, I guess.
Yeah,
it's called now.
yeah. I don't know
We
anything
don't know
about.
how much is being taken right down there.
Oh, I don't know.
So
I
Okay.
don't know.
we take some roll-off boxes. Yeah,
Oh,
we-
you're talking about our waste.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the contaminated soil, how much
Yeah.
of that is being taken
Very little.
right down to East Liverpool?
Very
not,
little.
Those are roll-up boxes, so it's just smaller quantities, and and we're very limited by how many they can take per day. And it's not all the roll-off boxes, like you'll see different roll-off boxes going to different disposal facilities, but we're usually sending 1 or 2 a day.
So that's maybe
But-
20
but,
yards of material.
You know, and then, one day there might be 11 roll-offs going off site, but they're going to a different facility. So there's not a huge amount. I'm sure we can pull those
Yeah.
numbers and I can tell
How
you,
many
Mark.
properties
I just don't have
along
it.
Taggart has been deemed unsafe?
None.
None?
So even with the high dioxins.
Well, all right, so let's talk about that some more. So that was one point in space.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I've asked Mr. Smith to provide the quality assurance sampling plan that they used to basically build out their sampling program. What is that one piece of data intended to prove, right? And then I want to see a report to see what their conclusions are. So, and I asked him today, and he said, well, I got to check with my experts, so he doesn't even know.
I didn't know if you guys tested at any level, like, say, my house, you know, Scott came and
So we-
tested my house.
Yeah.
He tested it where you know, he put
So
out
we-
there last night.
We do have a number of properties up your way that were sampled, either on the right of way by the road or on property. When we sample by the road, the levels are always higher because roads are dirty. You know, think about all those trucks that are coming in to get loaded. They're not coming in pressure washed. They're going out pressure washed, but they're not coming in pressure washed. So who knows what
Well,
are
how
on
about
those
East
tires?
Martin when for the last 2 months, they've been like 30, 40 trucks.
Yeah. So
You know what
those,
I mean?
those trucks weren't on site though. They were in the support areas. So all the dust you see on the roads aren't coming from site. The trucks are pressure washed. So all that dirt, that's not contaminated site dirt. That's dirt from the support areas, from everywhere that the staging, the trucks and materials are staged. Non-hazardous trucks and
Well,
materials are
they
staged.
have hazardous placards on them.
Yeah, but they're
'Cause
pressure
they're
washed.
They're
30,
hauling it.
52 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, they're pressure washed before they leave the site though. The
So
ones,
they're hauling waste.
what's that?
Then where's the dirt coming from?
From the support areas.
So, Mark, so if I could, I'm sorry, so the idea, right, so trucks come in off of Pleasant, and so this is why we say they're never in one of the hot zones. So if they're gonna get loaded out of the big blue tanks, they come in, they come around, they come this way, and now they would come back. The plan is for them to do a turnaround here and then head back out. This area was all crushed stone, right? This area all the way back here, crushed stone. This area up here, crushed stone. This area back here, crushed stone, and then some track mats. These actually have mats. You can see how flat it is here. So all of that crushed stone, as you continue to drive those big trucks on it, those rocks continue to break, and they grind it up, and so more and more fines start to accumulate. And then, it's summer, it's hot, so it continues to form more dust. And as those trucks go across them, you're just generating more and more dust. So that's why we've been paving. And so much has been paved. So we're paving here. This area has been paved all the way back into here, out down this way. All of this is paved. The whole area back here is paved. So taking a big concerted effort to pave those areas so that we can reduce that dust.
That's
Because
right.
it has been a really big problem for us.
And if it's in the contaminated area here, it goes through these truck washing stations before it leaves.
Correct.
So none of this
So
dust.
those are not paved.
Right, none of this dust is coming on the road, right? It's, from all these support areas. That's where all the dust is coming from. So, okay, let's do 2 more questions, right? Yep. And then,
My question is, I just recently saw new monitors pop up at the plaza by my house, and
Yeah, I saw
asked
those
a
too.
gentleman what this was, welcome to East Palestine, but what is this, who are you with? EPA, Norfolk Southern. He says, we're a private company, and I'm going, so what are you testing for? And he says, we're a private company, and I'm going, okay, welcome to East Palestine, but I'm real curious to know, what are they testing for? And if you can't tell me, will you please find out? Because Sulphur Run, as you say, you're testing where it's open,
Yep.
it runs right underneath
Yep.
T&M where I live, and I smell a lot of stuff a lot of times, and I'm thinking, are they testing for something because of the odors, or, that's
Yep.
my question.
So, yeah.
What
it's
are
a-
they,
it-
and who are they?
It's a good question. Those are called SUMA canisters. They sample for volatile organic compounds, right? My guess is that somebody's probably doing a study on, and it's not us, it's not Norfolk Southern, because we asked the same question. We have no idea who it is.
So people can just come in and
If they get,
pick stuff up?
if they get permission from the property owners, yeah. So,
The experts from the class action attorneys.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And,
Class action.
and there have been tons and tons of we call it third-party work here. And I've talked to a number of residents, they're like, oh, I got this data. Can you look at my data? I'm like, well, I'd like to see the plan this data's come from, but sure, we'll take a look at it. And then some of them say it came from attorneys, some say it came from some of the, like the Scott, some of the other third-party people that are in town. So, yeah, there's a ton of people doing a ton of work. So.
That's the problem, is we don't know, as the average person, like you're talking about, you know, like Scott not reporting this correctly, or so-and-so, but how do we know?
I know.
Is your method correct? Is Scott's correct? Is Dr. Welton's correct?
That's why we,
That's why we need our own independent scientists
Right.
as a community.
So, Jamie, that's why I say all the time, if you're going to come in town and collect samples, do it under what we call a quality assurance work plan. So that, you know, our work plans are all on the website. You know
Right.
what we're sampling for, you know why we're sampling. When these guys come into town, if they're not sharing work plans, we have no idea what the
So
data
that's
is
what we
intended to
should be
prove.
asking for, is
Yep.
a work plan and
Absolutely.
the raw data. Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
Anybody who's collecting data. Well, so that's a private situation. Who knows what the property owner gave them permission to do? Who knows who they are? It's none of our business.
And they're under,
Yeah.
they're under no obligation to report
That's right.
to us any of that stuff. Like, if they wanna share it, that's, like, I can say as a scientist, like, we want that data, especially we want them to do the work plan, because we don't want people just coming out and sampling God knows what and saying, we found something, well, where did you find it, where's the work plan, because that's how you validate it. That's how you know that it's real. If
Yeah.
not, it could be from anything, on anything, you don't know the quality of their equipment, they don't know any of that. But our door is always open, because we wanna see it to
Yeah, but
complete.
see, we don't know that
I know.
either.
I understand.
And like I said to Mark, nothing personal, but I don't trust the EPA. You know, when that evacuation was lifted, it's kind of like someone cheating on you. Norfolk Southern didn't owe me nothing. My federal government owed me something. And when I had to fight for my own child's life to get that trust back, I don't know that I could ever, you know, trust the EPA again. So at least if you can tell us what to ask for, you know, we can take it from one side to another, or
Yeah.
whatever we have to do.
And we're happy to help in that capacity. Yeah, for sure.
This is an easy question. I just wanted to know, what is the work schedule down there? And then do you ever come up South Pleasant? South Pleasant is not, I mean, at the bottom maybe, but is there any trucks or anything coming up or down South Pleasant? Because it's really busy. South Pleasant goes towards PA.
Yeah, so there shouldn't, that's not on the approved truck route that the city and Norfolk Southern have.
But they're using it.
So you mean,
Dr. Chai
all right,
almost
hold
got
on.
killed on that road.
Yeah, and I live right up,
hold on.
up the hill.
So let me make sure, well, you mean for the waste trucks or just for the general contractors?
These were
Coming in
box,
off of Route 51, Mark.
Yeah.
All right, I need to see a map. Are they the waste trucks or are they,
It's a variety of different types.
It is. We've seen some really big
Okay.
18-wheelers coming down there.
and
Okay.
the road's not equipped for that kind
No.
of traffic, it's a
Okay.
back road.
So-
I've talked to Norfolk Southern.
okay, because I saw Rick's video with the HEPACO truck.
Yeah.
And but that's not a,
That's the
that,
exact route
Yeah.
that's what we've seen.
but if the
down
waste trucks are doing that, that shouldn't be
there. They shouldn't
happening.
be out there.
Okay,
Route
so we'll
51
bring, yeah, I'll make a
in
note.
South Pleasant?
Thank you.
Yes. South Pleasant.
Okay,
Let you know, and it's already started.
okay. All right, well anyways, that was our last question anyway. Did you,
Yeah, just what's the work schedule? Like 8
oh,
to
wait,
5?
work schedule, Tricia?
So, 7 till 8, like 6 till 8.
6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you, everybody, for
Thanks,
attending
everyone.
this week.
And as usual, we said this is go till 7 and we went a half hour late.